All right, so get this. You guys sent us a ton of stuff on Maquoketa Caves State Park in Iowa, and we're talking everything.
Wow.
From travel blogs to, like, official websites for the park.
Oh, cool.
So, like, you know, hikers' guides and even YouTube videos of people going into the caves.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we've got
a lot to work with.
a lot to unpack here.
It seems like it.
Our mission is to figure out, you know, what is it about this place that people are driving hours to go see it?
Yeah.
So by the end of this deep dive, you should know
For sure.
if Maquoketa Caves is worth adding to your
Absolutely.
travel bucket list.
Yeah.
We'll see if it lives up to the hype,
Right.
and we'll find out what you need to know
Definitely.
before you go.
I'm excited.
The first thing that, like, jumped out at me
Okay.
was some of these travel blogs.
Uh-huh.
Like, people were so excited.
Yeah.
One blogger even said it was like
Wow.
one of their top 3 travel experiences
Top 3. That's a pretty big statement.
of all time.
Especially since they said at the beginning that they didn't think Iowa had much to offer.
Right, like they were expecting cornfields and then bam,
Yeah, and then they're blown away by this cave system.
caves everywhere.
Right.
So to get a better picture of what we're dealing with here,
Okay.
some of the more, like, official sources like Wikipedia
Mm-hmm.
and the Iowa DNR website,
Yeah.
they tell us that Maquoketa Caves State Park is in eastern Iowa, Jackson County,
Gotcha.
northwest of the city of Maquoketa.
Makes sense.
And the main attraction is, of course,
Caves.
caves.
Obvious.
It's got more caves than any other state park in Iowa.
Really?
Yeah, which is kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, it is wild.
And this is because it's in the driftless area.
Oh, the driftless area.
Yeah, remember that from
I do vaguely remember that from geology class.
geology class.
Yeah.
What is it about the driftless area that makes it so special?
Well, so basically it's a region in the Midwest that the glaciers missed
Okay.
during the last ice age.
So it wasn't, like, flattened out?
Exactly. So while the glaciers were like smoothing everything else out,
Right.
the driftless area was left alone and it
It
created...
was just eroding naturally.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that erosion is actually what created the caves.
Gotcha. So, like, what kind of rocks are we talking about here?
Primarily limestone, which is easily dissolved by slightly acidic water. So over thousands of years,
Mm-hmm.
rainwater seeped into cracks in the limestone,
Yeah.
and it slowly widened them,
Oh, wow.
creating the caves that we see today.
So if acidic water makes these caves, I wonder, like, when it rains, do the caves flood?
That's a great question.
Right.
Something to keep in mind as we learn more about them. Makes me think about the types of formations in these caves
Right.
and whether they're affected by flooding.
That's a good point. Yeah. So moving on from there, we know that there are all these different types of caves.
Right.
Some sources said that they're super easy to explore.
Yes.
Some are more challenging.
Yeah, you're right.
What's that all about?
So this park has something for every level of adventurer.
Okay.
You have Dance Hall Cave,
Okay.
which is the largest in the park.
Wow.
It's a developed cave.
What does that mean?
It means it has cement walkways and lights
That's-
and even stairs. So it's really accessible.
Okay, so that one's easy to explore.
Exactly. But then you have the wild caves,
Oh,
which are for the more adventurous types.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I noticed that a few specific caves kept popping up.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it seemed like everyone had a favorite.
Yeah.
What were some of the standouts?
Well, Y Cave was mentioned a lot.
Y cave.
It's shaped like a Y,
Oh, cool.
and it requires you to descend into a sinkhole to explore it.
So, like, a challenge for our listener.
Yeah, exactly.
What other wild caves are popular?
Up and Down Cave.
Up and down cave.
Yeah, it seems like people really like that one.
Okay.
Visitors talk about squeezing through tight spaces, but then they're rewarded with a huge chamber on the other side.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the one YouTuber who
Yeah.
found that Steel Gate passage.
Oh, right.
Sounds like a hidden gem.
It does.
Oh,
It's unmarked and winding, so it offers a sense of discovery and maybe even some solitude.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And speaking of that YouTuber, he said it was so cold in there that he
Yeah.
could see his breath.
You know, a lot of people mention that,
Yeah.
that the caves stay cool and humid.
Okay.
So definitely bring a light jacket,
Yeah.
even if it's hot outside.
Good to know. What about shoes?
Sturdy shoes are a must.
Okay.
Sounds like you could be walking through some mud and water.
Yeah.
Several sources recommended wearing old clothes,
Okay.
ones that you don't mind getting dirty,
Right.
and waterproof shoes, of course,
Makes sense.
and a good flashlight.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And extra batteries just in case.
Always good to have extra battery.
Right.
So we've talked about the caves themselves.
Yeah.
But what about above ground?
Oh, there's plenty to see up there too.
Like what?
Well, there's the Natural Bridge,
Oh,
which is said to be the largest in the Midwest.
Wow.
It's this massive dramatic rock formation.
Cool.
And then there's a 6-mile trail system that winds through the park.
6 miles. That's a good amount.
Yeah, if you like hiking.
There's a nice long hike.
Yeah.
One of the hikers did mention
Yeah.
that the trails are poorly marked.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so it could be an adventure, especially for someone who's new to the park.
A good map wouldn't hurt.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Speaking of being prepared,
Yeah.
those caves were pretty dark.
Uh-huh.
I wonder if anyone had any close calls.
You know, I think one blogger mentioned accidentally venturing off the main path
Oh, no.
in Dance Hall Cave.
In the easy one.
Yeah, the developed one. And getting momentarily disoriented.
Oh, that's a little scary.
Yeah, a little bit.
Maybe that's a good transition to talk about the history.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Because it's pretty interesting.
For sure.
So, for starters, there's evidence of Native American presence in and around the caves.
Oh, wow.
For hundreds, possibly even thousands of years.
Wow, so they were drawn to this area, too.
Yeah.
That's cool.
We're talking artifacts, tools, the works.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then there's Dance Hall Cave.
Right, the big one.
The massive one.
Yeah.
Well, back in the 1860s,
Okay.
it was actually used for concerts and dances.
Really?
Yeah, can you imagine?
Wow, what did that sound like?
I know.
Crazy.
There's also this mysterious discovery
Yeah.
that happened in 1922.
What was that?
Human remains were found in a hidden chamber
Whoa.
within one of the caves.
That's creepy. Like, what happened there?
I know, makes you think.
It does.
And then there's the Civilian Conservation Corps.
Oh, the CCC.
And the Works Progress Administration.
Yeah.
WPA.
They played a huge role in developing the park.
Okay.
During the Great Depression.
Wow.
A lot of the historic structures that are there were built by them.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, it adds another layer to the park's history.
Definitely.
Like those poorly marked trails we talked about.
Yeah.
I wonder how the CCC workers dealt with that back then.
I know, right?
They didn't have smartphones.
No GPS.
Maybe they had better maps.
Or just local knowledge.
Right.
Passed down.
Yeah.
You know, we've got a lot more to unpack here when it comes to Maquoketa Caves.
We do. I think our listeners are starting to get a good picture, though.
Totally.
Of what to expect.
But before we move on, there's still some practical stuff we gotta talk about.
Yeah.
Like, when's the best time to go? And how should people prepare for those trails?
Yes. Good questions.
And we need to revisit that whole cave flooding thing.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Let's dive into all of that in part 2. Sounds good. So with all this talk about, you know, the wonders of Maquoketa Caves,
Yeah.
there are a few things our listeners should be aware of.
Okay, like what?
Like, when is the best time to go?
Yeah, to avoid the crowds.
Avoid the crowds, exactly.
Right.
Well, it seems like Maquoketa Caves is a pretty popular place.
Yeah, especially on weekends.
Especially on weekends, yeah.
I bet.
One source even mentioned that parking can be a challenge during peak times.
So if you're trying to, like, have a peaceful experience?
Yeah, if you want peace and quiet,
Right.
weekdays are definitely the way to go.
Weekdays, okay.
Yeah.
What about camping?
Oh, yeah, good point.
We heard about that YouTuber who couldn't even find a spot.
Yeah, you're going to want to make reservations,
Okay.
especially during the busy season.
Reservations essential.
Essential.
Okay, so we've learned a lot about the caves themselves.
Yeah.
But what about those hiking trails?
Oh, yeah.
6 miles of trails sounds like a lot.
It is a decent amount.
What should our listener expect?
Well, most of the hikers who wrote reviews called them
Okay.
easy to moderate in terms of difficulty.
Okay.
But, you know, be prepared for some stairs, rocky areas, and some inclines.
Right.
It's a good workout.
You'll get your steps in.
And remember that hiker who was complaining about the trails being poorly marked?
Oh, yeah. Definitely bring a map.
Yeah, good map.
Either a physical one or, you know, download one on your phone.
Right, just in case.
Just in case.
Speaking of being prepared,
Yeah.
what gear should our listener bring?
Well, a flashlight is a must.
Especially for those wild caves.
Especially for the wild caves. Yeah.
Right.
And extra batteries would be a good idea, too.
For sure, always good to have extra batteries.
Always.
What about clothes?
Sturdy, waterproof shoes are absolutely key.
Okay.
Yeah. You'll be walking on uneven ground, and you might even encounter water in the caves.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, wear old clothes
Okay.
that you don't mind getting dirty.
Right.
And you might want to pack a light jacket, too.
Yeah.
Even if it's warm outside.
Yeah. You know how it is.
The caves are cool.
The caves are cool and humid.
So we've talked about how these caves were carved out by acidic water over thousands of years.
Right.
But what happens when it rains really hard?
Hmm.
Are there any concerns about, like, the water level rising in the caves.
That's a really good point.
Right.
And it's not something our sources really addressed.
Flooding.
Yeah, like, is there a risk of flooding?
I mean, I would think so.
Especially in those wild caves.
Yeah, you would think so.
Maybe check with park officials.
Right.
If there's been a lot of rain.
Good idea.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
I want to go back to that feeling of like wonder and awe that comes with exploring a place like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like stepping back in time.
It is.
You know, you're exploring this world that's been hidden for centuries.
And there's like this stillness and silence in the caves.
Yeah, it's so peaceful.
Right.
Yeah. Such a contrast to like the busy world outside.
I bet.
Yeah.
It seems like even though Maquoketa Caves is a relatively small park, it really packs a punch.
It does.
In terms of adventure and natural beauty.
It offers a really unique blend of physical challenges and hidden places to explore.
And just the beauty of nature.
Exactly.
And I think that's why it resonated so strongly with those travel bloggers.
Sure.
It's a place that stays with you long after you leave.
Definitely.
Now that we've talked about all the good stuff,
I
think we should consider the other side of that.
Right, the impact all those visitors are having on this delicate ecosystem.
Right.
It makes you wonder how we balance access and enjoyment with preservation.
It's a tough question.
Yeah, it's a classic dilemma.
It is.
Yeah.
And some of our sources touched on that.
Yeah, they did.
What were some of the challenges that they mentioned?
Well, vandalism came up a lot.
Vandalism, really?
Yeah, like damage to the cave formations.
Oh, right, like that one source that talked about stalactites and stalagmites being broken off.
It's hard to believe people would do that.
I know, it's so sad.
Like, it's so beautiful.
To think that they took thousands of years to form.
Yeah, thousands of years.
And then just
gone like that.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
It is.
And sadly, vandalism isn't the only problem.
Right. There's also trash and litter.
Really?
Even on the hiking trails.
Oh, come on, people.
I know it's a reminder that we need to be mindful of our impact on the environment.
Pack it in, back it out.
Exactly. Leave no trace.
Right.
But it goes beyond just trash.
Okay.
There's also the issue of how human presence affects the bats who live in the caves.
That's right.
Even without white nose syndrome.
Right.
Bats are super sensitive.
They are.
To like
our noise and lights and stuff.
Exactly. Noise, like changes in temperature.
Yeah.
All of that can disrupt them
Wow.
during their hibernation or roosting.
So it's like this balancing act.
It is, right.
Letting people experience the caves, but also protecting the creatures that live there.
Exactly.
What are the park officials doing?
It seems like they're trying to find that sweet spot between access and preservation. Like they've made some upgrades to the campground and trails, and they have those signs.
About white nose syndrome.
Yes, explaining white nose syndrome and emphasizing responsible practices.
Education is so important.
It really is. Knowledge is power.
When it comes to conservation, for sure.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's a real team effort.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
Between park officials and visitors.
And just people who care about these places.
It's more than just a tourist attraction. It is a vital ecosystem.
It's a window into the past, and it deserves our respect and protection.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with one question.
Okay.
We've talked about how these caves were formed by water erosion over thousands of years.
Right.
But what about the future? How will climate change
good question.
impact this delicate balance?
You know, climate change has the potential to alter weather patterns, and that could lead to
more intense storms.
And
that could lead to flooding.
Flooding in the caves, exactly, which could damage formations.
And disrupt the bat habitats.
Yeah, exactly. It's all connected.
It really is.
Wow.
It highlights the need for research and proactive management.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today.
We have.
From the beauty and adventure that Maquoketa Caves offers to the challenges of preserving it.
For future generations.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I hope our listener takes away a sense of wonder and appreciation for Maquoketa Caves.
I hope so too.
Coupled with that commitment to being responsible stewards.
Absolutely.
Leave no trace.
Leave no trace. Be mindful of the ecosystem.
Be mindful.
And support conservation efforts.
Yes.
Wherever you go.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So on to part 3.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've talked about how awesome Maquoketa Caves is.
Right.
With all the cool stuff you can see and do there.
Yeah.
But now we got to look at like the other side of that.
The flip side.
Yeah.
How do we balance, wanting to see these places with protecting them?
It's a tough question.
It is.
Seems like a lot of parks are dealing with this.
Yeah, a lot of natural spaces are facing these challenges.
And Maquoketa Caves is no exception.
Right, based on what we've seen.
So where do we even start with this?
Well, we can start by looking at how people are impacting the park.
Okay.
Some sources talked about vandalism.
Yeah, one hiker mentioned seeing damage to like the stalactites and stalagmites.
It's so sad to think that people would do that.
I know, like why would you damage something so beautiful?
That's beyond me.
To think they took thousands of years to form.
I know, it's mind-boggling.
And then they're just gone.
It's heartbreaking.
It really shows how important education is.
Right. If people understood how those formations were created,
yeah,
they might think twice about
absolutely.
Yeah.
There was another source that mentioned trash.
Oh yeah, litter.
Even on the hiking trails.
It's like, come on, people.
I know, it's basic stuff.
Pack it in, pack it out.
Right. Leave no trace.
Exactly.
What about bats?
Oh yeah, that's another thing to consider.
Yeah.
Even without white nose syndrome.
Right.
They're really sensitive.
To us being there.
Yeah, to our presence, to the noise we make.
The lights.
The lights, exactly. All that can disrupt them.
Wow.
While they're hibernating or roosting.
But it seems like the park officials are trying to find that balance.
Yeah, it seems like they're making an effort to protect the bats while still letting people enjoy the caves.
Like those signs.
Yeah, the signs about white nose syndrome.
Yeah, and responsible cave practices.
Exactly.
And those recent upgrades to the campground.
Right, the campground and trails.
Yeah.
That's a good sign.
It shows they're thinking long term.
Definitely.
It really is a team effort.
It is.
You know, park officials, visitors.
And people who just care about these places.
Yeah.
Not just a tourist attraction.
Right. It's like a whole ecosystem.
Yeah. The window into the past.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on Maquoketa Caves,
yeah,
I'm thinking about the future.
What about it?
We know the caves were formed by water.
Over a really long time.
Thousands of years.
Yeah. But what about climate change?
Oh, that's a good question.
Right.
How will that impact things?
Yeah, we're already seeing changes in weather patterns.
More intense storms?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Which means more flooding.
Potentially.
Right.
Yeah.
And that could damage the caves.
It could.
Mess up the bat habitats.
And who knows what else?
It's like a domino effect.
Yeah, it really highlights how interconnected everything is. Wow. So we went from exploring hidden passages to the challenges of protecting this place.
And the uncertainty of the future.
Yeah.
What a journey.
If you're listening, I hope you learned something new.
Me too.
About Maquoketa Caves.
It's a fascinating place.
But also about the importance
of
being responsible.
When we're out there exploring.
Yeah, leave no trace.
Leave no trace.
Be mindful.
Be mindful.
Support those conservation efforts.
Absolutely.
Until next time.
Happy exploring, everyone.